You're listening to the Fit Mind, Fit Body podcast, where we explore the connection between exercise and positive mental health. And our big mission, it's to help 10,000 women develop fitter minds and bodies in the next 2 years. I'm your host, Michelle Frost. Let's get moving. Welcome to episode number 20 of the Fit Mind, Fit Body podcast. Today we talk to Jan Saunders about her journey with exercise, not just running, but exercise. Jan has taken to adventure like a duck to water. Enjoy this episode. I know that I enjoyed bringing it to you. So today we have another new friend of mine that I'm only meeting today. This is Jan Saunders, and she's going to share her running story with us today. So welcome, Jan. Thanks for being here.
Hello, hello.
So tell us just a little bit about you, because as I said, this is the first time I've ever had the pleasure to have a chat with you.
Well, it is, isn't it? We're coming cold.
I know, it's awesome.
That is such an open question, isn't it? Tell us a bit about you.
So you can, where did you grow up? Where did you grow up?
Okay, all right. There. Well, let's get the sort of like boring bits out of the way. Like I turned 59 in about 3 weeks.
Wow, no way.
Yeah, thanks, nearly. I live up near Noosa in Queensland, but I was born and lived basically my whole life in Victoria, and I moved up here about 18 months ago.
Are you city or country or town, Victoria?
Rural, sort of moved around a bit, was born down the Great Ocean Road, a little town called Fairhaven, but yeah, moved around quite a bit, sort of like in and around Melbourne area, with probably within a 50k radius of Melbourne. And yeah, that's, pretty well spent all my time down there. So I had a property in the Yarra Valley, a 20-acre property, for the last 25 years before I moved up here. And now I've got a 3-acre property up here. So I'm sort of semi-retired. I've got a bed and breakfast, like a vegan. I'm vegan. Vegan bed and breakfast that I've had since 2014. Wow. So I moved it up here. And so with one thing and another, with what's going on in the world, it's been pretty quiet, but it's okay. So I'm sort of doing what I was incredibly busy in Victoria, so it's actually been a lovely time to step back and have reacquaint myself with all the good things that I love to do in life, other than look after people and cook for them and stuff like that. So so anyway, but yeah, just sort of going backwards again a bit. Was a real horsey girl, like all my life. Was in the police force for about 33 years. 26 of those were in the mounted police as a trainer and instructor, mainly.
That is so cool. I don't think I've ever spoken to anybody who was in the mounted police.
He's a Mountie. Yeah, so I was a Mountie. I left in 2015, so still a few years ago. Yeah. And horses were a massive part of my life. And I got into sports, like running. I did a little bit of running, like all my adult life, because when you go into the police force back in the day, in the early 80s, you had to run quite a bit. So I sort of started to do some running then, off and on.
Yeah.
And also got into a bit of bodybuilding, but I got into all my multi-sport stuff at 45, so I was a late bloomer.
Wow. Yeah. So what made you do that? What made you get into multi-sport at 45?
A relationship breakup.
Oh, I had one of those in my 20s, and my mum said, "What are you running away from?"
Let's say no, we're running towards something.
Running towards it. That's
exactly. So I think it was that classic thing. So I'd split up from my partner, and I'd been a bit sad for a couple of years. Yeah. And I was in Africa, and I was doing climbing Kilimanjaro with some friends, and we'd done a little bit of training together. And I just had this thought, when it's all over and I go home again, I'm going to miss this. And I thought, well, maybe I should look for something that's active, that's got like-minded, active, outdoorsy, nature-loving people, and try and find community again, like for my mental health. And so it popped into my mind. My ex had actually, showed me this 2-day adventure race online a couple of years previous. And I just said, like, are you freaking joking? Like I said he was a nutter. And anyway, I thought, like, oh, I might actually look and see if there's like a little beginner's race of this adventure racing thing. And that's what I did. I actually did a little what they call a sprint adventure race, just with some random friend that I just said, come and do this thing with me. It's like 3 or 4 hours. And so that sort of spawned a great love of adventure racing for a few years.
So when you say adventure racing, obviously there's running, but there's other things like possibly canoeing or climbing.
Yes, so like a paddle, some form of paddling where usually some sort of like sit on top kayaking type thing, and mountain biking. And then they often have various other like random things in there. So there could be like canyoneering and like going through tunnels and ropes and all sorts of things. So it just depends. So yeah, that was a huge love of mine up until 2012 when I got a back injury through work. And that's actually how I got into running. But that we will come to later.
It's like an unfolding story.
Yes.
So you 2014, did you say, when you started adventure? Racing? What did you say that was?
2014 was when I started the B&B.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was 45, so that must have been, my math is appalling.
So maybe that's where I messed up. I think
that's all right. Yeah. So I think it was like something like 19. Oh no, she must have been 2000. Sorry,
we need a calculator.
2008.
Two of us.
2008. I did my first adventure race. Yeah, but I started doing like I went to Africa and stuff a couple of times in 2007.
Oh wow. So and then you kept doing that for some time until you hurt your back. So so from 2009, from the start of 2009 till literally September 2012. So it's it's etched into your mind.
Oh yeah, because that's when it happened, and I thought my life was over. Like, because when my job was physical, my the relationship with my then boyfriend, it was all about outdoor activities. Like, he was a mountaineer, and we were like traveling around the world doing climbing and bushwalking, and obviously my job, and then I had my farm, my property. Everything revolved around physicality, and my self-identity was incredibly wrapped up in physicality.
That is so interesting that you say that, because one of the big things I have here on my notes that I have for every call is identity, and that is with people tying their identity around something physical. In the podcast we talk about running, but it's the same no matter what it is. And then when it's taken away from you, when it's so enmeshed in that physical nature of who you are, like, how did you deal with that?
And emotional. It's all like, whoa. It was a very, very tough time for me because I had a long distance relationship. My partner lived in Goulburn in New South Wales, so we're about 800-900 k's apart. And we're both, very independent people, so it was probably a perfect relationship until I sort of needed him a little closer. And being a mountaineer, he wasn't the most empathetic person in the world. I hope he doesn't listen to this podcast. We're still very good friends. No, he's actually really lovely, but he just wasn't there. Like, I think I saw him 4 days in 4 months, that period where I needed him most. So, obviously I had other friends around, but it was just a very, very difficult time. Like, because it was also the first time I'd had quite a really quite debilitating injury where I wasn't able, I wasn't even able to go and feed my horses. But, plenty of the time I could barely just get up to go to the toilet. So it was quite bad for a while. So, could I do my job? Because, as a horse trainer, that's actually how that happened. and all this other stuff. So, and you sort of catastrophize. You sort of think, oh, what happens? Like, is this the beginning of the end? What happens if I can't do any of this stuff anymore? Because you sort of lose a little bit of faith in that this too shall pass, because you've not had a back injury before. It sounds really dire. And when it's spasming like crazy and there's a lot of pain, you sort of can't imagine it being good again. So, but of course it did.
So, you just did what you were told by your physicians and things, I assume.
Did. So it was like, we had a couple of months of just assuming it was some sort of soft tissue thing, so I was getting treated, and then it became apparent, like the GP said, no, there must be something more going on because you're only getting very short-term relief. So I had the MRI, found the herniation, and then so the physio is like, okay, we have to stop everything now. So like that was even worse, and that made it feel worse, like making me stop everything, because when I was still like moving more, it sort of has to get worse before it can get better, and you don't understand that at the time, and it was awful. But they were treating me. I was lucky that it was work care because they were treating me 2 or 3 times a week, and then eventually I was allowed to do clinical Pilates, which was a huge thing for me physically and mentally. It gave me some light at the end of the tunnel and being able to move again. And they also said that I could start walking as far as I liked. And so that was like, I literally went up to like 80, 100 kilometres a week of walking. So I'd get up at 3:15 and go walking. Like when I was starting to go back to work again, just doing light duties, I'd be out before work, at work during lunchtime. Like part of my job as the horse trainer, I was training other trainers to train police horses. So I would go out, normally I'd be on a horse, but I would go out on foot with them and train them from the ground right through the streets of Melbourne, Oh, wow. So that was quite funny. And then I'd come home and I'd walk again. So that's how I actually sort of got into ultra running, because I was allowed to
From
start
walking a horse around the streets of Melbourne.
Sort of.
You got into ultra running.
From just like ultra walking, because then eventually I was allowed to start walk jogging. And I lived in a very hilly area. And it was just because I wasn't a swimmer. Like I said, you could swim, but I was a terrible swimmer. So that didn't work for me. So as I started to come back, it was just like longer walk jogging. And, but I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I actually, when I was in a really bad place and feeling very dark, and I was just sort of sitting on my own at home, feeling sorry for myself, looking online. And I went vegan in this stage too. I think I had a lot more empathy for pain and suffering. And I think, and also a lot more opportunities to look at YouTube and be horrified about things. So that's when I went vegan. But I came across a race called the Coastal Challenge in Costa Rica, and they had the most evocative film clip I've ever seen, with the most wonderful, haunting music and these beautiful scenes of people running through sunlight-dappled rivers, that look like they're in the Amazon, wrong country, obviously. But, but, and then this haunting music and these mountains and mist and beaches and literally the hair stood up on the back of my neck. And here was I, like barely able to walk up my stairs, and I just said, I'm going to do this race. So I literally entered that race then and there.
That's
it was
amazing.
Ridiculous. Yeah, because it was about, when was that? So it must have been like about 11, 12 months ahead. And I thought, I'll be okay. A bit like the Kevin Costner Field of Dreams, like build it and they will come. I thought, like, enter this race and you will be able to do it.
How long since your accident had it been when you entered that race?
About 3 months. And maybe 2 or 3 months. So it was still pretty bad. I think it wasn't that long after, they said, it's a herniation, you have to stop doing everything. And yes, I was in a yucky place. So anyway, so I did enter that race. Eventually I was able to start walk running. Then, of course, like my physio loved me because every exercise they gave me, I would do, and they knew I would do it. So I was the perfect patient.
Do you think that important, setting that goal, like I guess what I'm getting at, was that goal the thing that made you that really good patient for the physio and all the other things that you did?
A little bit.
You had that goal.
My motivation was extremely high anyway, like without the goal of the race. But the race just gave me a big, beautiful, wonderful, audacious dream. It was the romanticized pinnacle of returning to physicality. I'm going to go to Costa Rica, a place I've never been in my life, and I'm going to run through sunlight dappled rivers, for
Amazing.
250 Ks. So, so it was just this beautiful, tangible thing. And having entered it, you feel like you're really signing up, making this commitment to yourself. But it became apparent 6 months before the race that it was not going to happen for me that year. So I did scratch, and they said, look, we're going to keep your deposit, which is a bit mean, I thought, because it's significant. But if you do the year after, we'll give you half of that. So it's like $800 they kept as I will put $400 to take it off your next one. So I did do that, and I did do that race, and I did complete that race and got in the top 10 females. So
that is amazing. So tell us about that race. So I guess you got to the end of your, well, not end, but your recovery period. How did you know when you would be able to do that? Because like back things can go on for years. I mean, we have all heard of people.
I just had a really bad flare up again like 3 months ago. And again, I had to get someone to move in because I couldn't even feed my animals. So so it still happens. Not as much, like maybe every 2 years or so something will happen. But once it's there, it's there. So anyway, so the Coastal Challenge. So what happened? I was, I realised it wasn't going to pan out for me around mid-2012, because it was actually 2011. I hurt my back, September 2011. So mid-2012, I realised, okay, you've sort of been a bit ambitious with that one. So I just put it off until the next year, so 2014, because it's a January race. So I thought, this gives me lots and lots of time to be stronger, but there was no way knowing I was going to be ready for 2013. So I'm going along and I'm doing Pilates at that time, and things are getting better, and I can see that it's just going to take time and get stronger. And I was back at work doing light duties. I wasn't riding, but driving and stuff was painful, and cycling and paddling was painful. Anything sitting, which shortens your hip flexors, was bad. So any form of sitting for too long. So it can be quite difficult in life. So going out on these long walks with the walk jog thing was actually lovely, and my back did respond quite well to that. I just tried to run too much too soon. So I was getting better, and I decided, I looked at the air flights to go to Costa Rica, and so expensive from Melbourne. And then I sort of realised that actually buying a bare bones around the world ticket was around the same price as just going to Costa Rica, because you have to sort of go to, I think you have to go to America and then go down. So I just thought, you know what? I'm a little bit fearful of going back to work, because I was, starting to get better. I was worried about going back to work, going back to training young horses again and doing the work that I was doing in the 100K round trip driving every day, and being back to square one. I was really quite scared of that after all of this time. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to take all of this time off. So I strung all these different leaves together, and I took 11 months and I went backpacking around the world.
Wow. And that was your training for the race, or did you do that after the race?
Basically, yes. I sort of just did this running, house sitting. The plan is no plan except running and exploring the world trip at age 52 or 3 or something.
That's fantastic, Jan. That's really awesome. Yeah, it's such a brave thing to do too, to go off by yourself. A lot of people find that that's without an injury. So, there'd be a lot of people who would find that threatening even without having something that could flare up, their back and leave
and
them
I hadn't traveled overseas alone before either. I'd been on a few trips with my ex, the mountaineer.
Yeah.
But so it was quite a big thing. But again, I had a big why, and I'd had a bit of change in my life. I'd gone vegan, and you're a bit of a weirdo when you do that. I didn't know any other vegans at that time.
There's more and more of them these days, I'll tell you.
I know there's so many now. It's such a big thing. Like, you used to be like, what is this vegan thing? But now everybody knows. But anyway, so that was like amazing. So, I got house sitters in, and off I went. And I actually did pack my, have you seen those grid rollers? They're very short, hollow, hard rollers. They're called the grid.
I don't know that. I mean, I've got a roller, but
anyway, it's a very short, hollow roller, and so I put it in my pack and I'd stuff all clothes. I took the roller with me and spiky balls as well, because it was still very touchy. I was worried about the plane flight, because I was going straight to Rome.
A long flight.
But in the end, I actually sent all those things home after a few months because they were a bit cumbersome. For
your training while you were traveling, how did you manage that? You were saying races, so did you sign up for runs around the place, or just do tourist runs?
Just training. I just literally do what I used to do on my pony as a child, is just like head out and just explore. I just follow my nose. So I did get lost with no language
brilliant
various times, but you have your hydration pack on, so you've got water. I always made sure I had food. And I've got my phone, so it's the first time I'd had a smartphone, which sort of helped. But I'd just go off for the day. So I just walk around, explore. I didn't have to do anything. So, there was nowhere to be. So it was quite wonderful. So I got to see lots. The only place I really didn't run freely was Morocco. I did end up spending about 7 or 8 weeks in Morocco, but it wasn't the type of country, you'd sort of go running on your own in. I did have other wonderful adventures. I drove about 9,000 in a little Suzuki, and I did go and climb the second highest mountain there, which was nice. But so I had other adventures there, but all the other countries I tend to just go for long runs. But I did go walking in Morocco, but to be a bit more careful. We tend to get hassled by faux guides and things if you're in towns and stuff. But you learn how to handle people in a nice way and get the lay of the land. It was a wonderful growth experience. I often say, when you get a bad injury, it seems like the end of the world, but I actually, to me, it was a launch pad for me for two of the most biggest areas of growth probably in my life, which was going vegan. It's just, this is my work and everything now. It's a huge part of who I am. And then, of course, getting me into this wonderful ultra running, which, though I don't do it now, it was amazing. It was wonderful. And I just, and stemming from that was all these great travel experiences. So I just grew in confidence as a person, because I think when everything is threatened to be taken from your life, when you have the opportunity, you grab things with both hands, So perhaps if I'd continued in my comfortable little existence that I'd already known, I never would have done something like that, So I'm actually quite grateful for hurting my back.
Isn't it amazing, hearing you say that, and yet this, your life before that sounded also, for many people, that you had plenty of uncomfortable moments. You were off mountain climbing and doing things like that. True. But it's that comparison.
That is true.
Not to mention how, when we look back, we realize that at times of where things are the hardest in our lives, it often leads to something pretty amazing on the other side. It's getting through that tough stuff, and you get
it's like the what's that guy's name? But they talk about the obstacle is the way. So it's not the obstacle in the path. That is the path. So so I really do. It brought that lesson home very strongly. So it was great. But the Coastal Challenge was a wonderful, wonderful race. It was like the perfect first race in a way. It's I think it was a 5-day staged race. So it's 235 Ks total. very diverse landscape. Obviously, the jungles, beaches, mountains, and very steep. And this sort of like movable camp, and a beautiful community of people.
So when you say like the longest I've run is 60 kilometers, so okay. I didn't need to stay anywhere. So in my head, and you go stay, so I go, oh, that actually sounds doable. So you're saying that you run a particular distance in a day, whatever that is for that day, and they have a camp, and then they do it again. Is that sort of how?
Correct. Yeah. So that's called a staged race. So I think I haven't done many. I think that might be the only staged race I've ever done. So I don't know how they all go, but like this one was, maybe some things are a bit of an out and back thing to a central thing. I don't know, but they obviously had to pack up and move you along the way. So you'd come into the next place along, and, they'd had the kitchen thing there. So they're cooking your meals. And, they being Costa Rica, there was, plenty of sort of fruit and salady things that I could eat. And plus I'm always used to being pretty self-sufficient. You don't assume that you can get what you need. So, I
got a pocket full of almonds.
Well, yeah, I mean, I even bought, when I was in the States, just before I went down there, I bought like this little blender. It's a bit like a little ninja blender, I suppose. Yeah. And because I found out they had the same power thing as America. So I just took it with me. So I was making these fantastic smoothies because they'd have all this fruit and everything. And I bought chia and oats with me. Yeah. They'd have all these coconuts and all this amazing fruit. And people were like really like envious of me and my smoothies, like post-race. I actually ended up giving it to one of the volunteers because he was always like enamored by my smoothie. So I gave it to him before I left.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
So yeah, it was a great race, and my goals were to finish it like in its entirety and not be injured, because I was actually flying home 3 days after the race finished, after that whole 11 months. It was the pinnacle. It was the last thing I was going to do. And so I did give myself 3 days grace just in case I pulled up and I was in a world of pain. But as it turned out, it was absolutely great. And then, and I finished in its 10th female. So I was in the top 10. So I was really stoked. So it was great.
That's obviously an annual race, or maybe it didn't happen last year. But
I don't know what it did. I do follow it. It sort of looked like it did. But maybe they were just for locals. I don't know. Yeah. So, but it's a wonderful race. I'm not sure that they're probably up to about, what edition they'd be up to now, maybe 12 or 13, I don't know. But great race. If you get the chance, anyone's into that sort of thing, it was beautiful.
So when you came back, how did you continue your running once you came back from this amazing
I had a little bit of a backslide. Like I came back and obviously I was super fit. So I did a couple of things. Then I did about 3 weeks after I got back, I think the long plane ride and everything. I did have another little bit of a back glitch, I remember. I was at a running festival and I was doing sweep and stuff like that. And something went a bit amiss briefly, but it was all right. Then I did something called the Buffalo Stampede, which was a sky run. So I did 75K in that. Did well in that, but did have a fall and jerked back my shoulder and ended up with adhesive capsulitis. And that's I had a frozen shoulder for a few months, which is a bit of a bugger. So I did quite a few races around that time, and it was really good. I was really enjoying it.
So ultra trail type stuff as opposed to...
all longer stuff. Wilson's Prom, Gow 100, Great Ocean Walk 100, did a few 100K races, Falls Creek, the Alpine Challenge, did the 100K there. I think I got second female in that one. Huge gap between me and first. Huge. That's all right. Sounds good.
You obviously don't mind the hills as well.
Yeah, because you see the hills suit my body, because if I just tried to run a marathon different distance on the road, I think my back would just go no way. So it likes this walk, run, uneven circus, you know, because you're always changing your stride lengths.
Yeah.
You know, your body's continually moving. You have to use your core a lot because of the terrain. And that suits my back really, really well. So for me, hilly ones are better, because if I just ran, it'd be no good. So the big pinnacle, I guess, was Transpyrenea in 2016.
Where is that?
In the Pyrenees in France.
I was going to say that's not local. That's not Victorian.
So I'd been vegan a few years, and I was doing quite a bit of animal rights stuff in Melbourne area, and I had the B&B, and I'd been doing a few bits and pieces that, like fundraising for different animal rights organisations, like Animal Liberation Victoria, the International Anti-Poaching Foundation, which is, I don't know if you heard of a guy called Damien Mander. He's from Melbourne originally, ex-Special Forces soldier, and he started this amazing foundation in Africa. Mainly, you know, it's anti-poaching, you know, self-explanatory.
For the big safari type animals.
So I'd gone over there and done a month volunteering with them and did some fundraising for them then. But there's a few sanctuaries and things, and I just wanted to do another fundraising thing. And the thing is with me, with doing hard stuff, I've come to realise I'm more externally motivated. So I'm not, if I'm doing it for something or someone, it's like I always say,
yourself.
Yeah, if I'd gone vegan as a diet, because, like, you know, I'd say I'd gone whole food, plant-based, and I'm doing this because I want to be really healthy, I would break it like a million times, because, like, I'd be like, just this once, who cares? But when you do it because it's part of, you know,
an external.
Yes, it's
supporting an external cause.
Animals. So, you know, it's a lot easier to stick to it if someone's tempting you with an ice cream or something, you know. So the run was the same. I thought, if I'm going to do a really scary run, I know I'm a bit of a sook, so I would very easily pull out if it was just about me. But if it was about, you know, doing it for a bigger purpose, I would be much more likely to continue on. So I signed up to this crazy race that a friend who told me about, and it was like nearly 2 years in advance. It was the inaugural running of this thing called Transpyrenea. So it was an 866 kilometre run across the GR10 from one coast to the other, basically. So there was 12 Australians originally going, all women. One by one, everyone pulled out except me. So I was like the least capable of all of us, and I was the one that ended up going. So the hopes and dreams of Australia on my shoulders, which was like such a crock. I was just joking, but like it was sort of funny because I was like the worst one. So I had all these like T-shirts made, like the Beat the Treat T-shirts with all the charities on the back and all of that. So I wore all these T-shirts while I did the run, and I had a target of $5,000, so $1,000 for each of the 5 charities. Ended up doing $6,500, which was great, which was lovely of everyone. I think because, like, particularly it was a bit of a slow start, and I think particularly because it's high and it's Europe, you do have mobile coverage quite a lot, and it was a non-stop unsupported race. So, you know, you're just on some remote mountain side at 2:00 in the morning, and all you can see is like lights in the valley, like 2,000 metres below you.
Wow.
and the wind's whistling, and occasionally you see goat's eyes like shining at you. And, you know, so I could just sort of get online and do a live crossing as I'm just walking along. Here I am in France, still going.
Wow.
Day 11. And,
so you must have had like your own tent, and like you carry your own tent. So how does that work?
I actually did I did end up taking a small. I was just going to take what they call a tarp, like it's just like a bivvy shelter. Yeah, but when I was training, I actually got caught in quite a big storm, and it sort of put the wind up me a little bit. I was so lucky. I just happened to be right near a stone, like a little stone cottage thing that people can go in. So I was lucky I was in that, but it did make me think, like, I don't want to just have my tent. But as it turned out, it would have been all right. But anyway, so you'd sort of like you could stop as much as you wanted, and there was like you had access to your drop bag every 250 Ks, which in the mountains is, you know, for me it was about three and a half days apart. Yeah. So you and as a vegan in France too, like I was more self-sufficient than most. Yeah, cheese and like processed meats, like nah. So I remember they had these army guy volunteers at one of the checkpoints, and I'd stopped, you know, and I had something to eat and stuff like that. And I didn't have a lot of like shared language, but anyway, as I was getting ready to go, one of these soldier guys saw me getting ready to go, and he grabbed my pack to help me put it on. And he just picked it up. He's like, "Mon Dieu!" Like, because it was so heavy. And he's looked at me, and I just gone like, "Yeah, vegan." It's got like a food in it.
That's apples and potatoes.
Well, it was just like, I don't know what it's just heavier than most people, you know, because we did have to leave each time we left what they called a base of life. If you translate it to English, you'd have to leave with 6,000 calories. So some people were such dickheads. Like one smart ass guy actually bought a bottle of olive oil, like, you know, just to get around that rule. Like, and I know this is the first time, just in the last week, the race director has just put up, it's going to be on again for the first time since 2016, because those sort of people, 5 of them took him to court and said that, like, you know, that it was dangerous and it was this and it was that. So we had to, it dragged on in court for years. So the poor bugger, like people were ready to do it the next year, and a week before the race in 2017, the courts cancelled it. So he's been fighting it ever since. But they sort of said, a couple of people, and including him, are you going to come back? And I'm like, nah. I would love to if I was still running, but I would just like to go and hike the GR10 now and actually see all the bits I missed because it was dark when I went through.
As you went through. Wow. So that was, how many days was that you were saying?
So I ended up doing 616 kilometres. I missed the second section, so I missed cut-off on the first section. There was a couple of reasons for that. I found me and another French guy that I'd teamed up with just towards in the last 36 hours, we came across a cow that was giving birth, but a calf was stuck. So we spent quite some time with her trying to get help for her. And I told him to go on because I knew that we were getting close to cut off. But he was lovely and he knew I didn't speak much French. And so anyway, so we're not 100% sure how that ended up, but the fire brigade was apparently coming and they'd found the owners. So hopefully that worked out. But I thought that would just be totally wrong for me to be out there fundraising for animals and then walking past one that was in a really bad way. So that wasn't going to happen. And plus then there was a massive storm up in the mountains that night. And we'd already done I'd already been on my feet for 20 hours that day. And we reached a refuge and it was still about another 4 hours off the mountain in the storm at night. And I just made that call to I'm just going to pull it and then I'll start the sister race. Which was going to start from midway point. So that ended up being a super smart strategic decision as far as my fundraising goes, because my race would have been over. I would not have made cut-off at the midpoint, and then I would have missed out on the opportunity to start the sister race, which was 450K. So I did the total of the run that I did was 616 in 11 and a half days, but I had 2 days off in the middle of that, which was rather lovely, back in town. And you know, I was staying at this really nice place, these people I'd met before the race, so that was nice. But yeah, it was a wonderful, wonderful race, very, very hard, brutal mountains over there. I think there's something like 60,000 metres total ascent in that 600 odd Ks I did.
So I guess, you know, in reflecting on that sort of stuff, what is going through your mind when it's really tough? Like it sounds like a lot of what you've thrown yourself into, like even before your back injury, the things that other people would go, well, I'm happy to watch that on the TV. You know,
it's a funny thing, you know, like hard things are relative. So, you know, as time goes on, I guess, I look at what I do, and sometimes I'll see it reflected back at me like that from what you just said, and I think, oh yeah, I have done some pretty amazing things, I guess. But I have friends that do what I consider amazing things, so my stuff looks like whatevs. And I'm just a whatevs athlete. Like, you know, I'm nothing special at all. And I don't know. I don't really look at it like that. People do amazing things all the time. I haven't even had a baby.
Isn't that funny, though, that's one of the, you know, you do a marathon, and on your path to a marathon, for example, so this is just sort of my experience, on your path to a marathon, you're thinking, this is amazing. Everyone around you, perhaps at that time, especially when you first start, is only doing a 5 or a 10K, although it's your family, and they go, oh, you're the first person in our family to ever run a marathon. How far is a marathon again? You know,
exactly. It's mind-blowing to them.
And it's like, whoa. And then you run a marathon, and then you kind of feel yourself being pulled in, especially if you're going to keep going and you enjoy it. You're like, oh, actually there's people who run ultra marathons, and then you find this other, and then there's like multi-sport events, and then there's like the adventure kind of stuff that you've done, and then you realize that even when you get there, there's always someone else or another adventure or another type of thing that you could do, which is a little bit more extreme or a little bit. And so it's an interesting, like, everybody, with all of our different personalities, how we treat that in our heads is probably different, but for some people you can see that's kind of what pushes them on and on and on. And the danger of that is, where do you stop? Like, there is no stop there if you're always comparing yourself to other people.
If that's your motivation, if it's sort of coming from a place of, you know, always wanting to be better, I guess, I think my stuff, like, I loved being out in those incredible places, like especially with adventure racing, because you're off trail, you're navigating map and compass. So say I did a couple of World Series races in Australia, but you're going in, you've got access to these like privately owned holdings of land up far north Queensland. That, like, one place I remember on 2010 when I did it with quite a competitive team, we were on this like massive cattle property, and where we went, there was a 70 kilometre trekking section, and like this property had been in their hands for generations, and they basically said, like, as far as we know, no one except the local Indigenous has ever been out there, like, on foot.
Wow.
Like, it just would fly over in the chopper. So, you know, it's that wild, and it's such a privilege to be able to go into places like that. And you know, and even though you missed out on seeing a lot of the incredible view in the Pyrenees when you're on a mountain, like, all night, there's also something very, very magical about being on a mountain on your own in the French Pyrenees and not seeing anyone either, because, you know, it's very long and the race got very spread out. So sometimes I wouldn't see anyone for, 12 hours easily, especially if you're going at night. I wouldn't see anyone all night.
So to me, it strikes, I'm a little bit like you. Like, if somebody said to me, here's, gave me a choice to buy a big fancy house or spend that same money on experiences, I would be more likely to choose the experiences, like to go off and, because to me, even being, as you said, in the middle of the night on the top of a French mountain, like, wow.
Yeah.
I'd be like,
it's really extraordinary. I mean, I remember that the night that comes to mind, it was actually my second last night out. I'd actually already fallen about 3 or 4 times in the previous 24 hours. And I did put my foot down a particularly deep sudden hole that was like buried in the grass. And I was really lucky, and it did enter my mind then, boy, you could easily snap an ankle doing that. Like, totally. That would be really bad up here. But it's also, I mean, it didn't happen in my back. I nearly pulled out of the race on day 2 because my back went into spasm really badly. And I thought, because I'd had a previous experience and I was coming back from Africa I think it was only a year or so before, and that put me out for 10 days. I thought, oh, that's it. My race is over. It's all over. And I was devastated. I'd even rung the race director and said my back has gone into spasm.
I don't know.
I'm out. Like, you know, when can you come and get me? I'll probably sometime tomorrow. But while I was just like, you know, there's another reason I missed the first cutoff, because I was there for 6 hours at this refuge, and it just occurred to me, like, it was getting on towards dusk, and I just thought, my back isn't any worse, and I'm actually able to move around. And I thought, well, I've done my dash now, because like the sweeps would have gone. I just went downstairs to get something from the bar, and I saw the sweeps. You know the sweeps, don't you?
I do know what a sweep is.
Yeah. Yeah.
For those of you who don't, it's the last person in a race. They come up and sweep everyone up, basically.
Make sure everyone's all right. So there were 2 sweeps and the last person, the last runner, and the last runner was like eating like crazily. And anyway, so I went up to them. I said, "Are you the sweeps?" And, you know, they didn't have a lot of English, but they sort of realised what I was saying. They're like, "Yeah."
Oui.
And they said, "Is he the..." And I said, "Oh my God." So I just lit up, and I just said, you know, and I'm trying to explain to them that I pulled out of the race because my back was bad, but it was actually okay. And because I knew that they were going to be behind me if I got my act together and got out the door before they did, that if something happened between there and the next morning when I expected to get to the next town, because I'd trained on that section before, they would find me, because that was my fear. It was thundering. There was thunder and there was a little bit of rain. So I was a bit worried that I'd just get a few Ks down the track and my back would go again. And I didn't want to do that, but they could pick me up. Like that, they'd find me and they could get help for me. So I trotted off happily into the thunder and the gathering dark, and had the most amazing night, and got into the next village at 6:30 the next morning at first light. And from then on, my back was good, just got better and better. Yeah.
So for the uninitiated, for that kind of run, how much running is there?
So in the Pyrenees, for someone like me, 5%.
Yeah, because you just think it's, I mean, apart from, and then some of the downs would be so steep, perhaps it'd be dangerous for running down. Anyway.
And also super technical, like very, very loose.
Like
plus I had up to like 10, 12 kilos in my pack. The pack I use is an adventure racing pack, so you can cinch it in really tight and you can run with that pack. Yeah. I ran the Larapinta just with a mate as a training thing 2 months before I went to France, because it was the only technical long section that I could test everything. So I ran the Larapintas in Northern Territory.
Yeah, I've just had a friend who's just done it, and another friend who's just camped it as well. Like walked it, someone who's run and one who's bushwalked it. So.
Okay, yeah, great. Yeah, I've just come back from my 5th one I ran one sweep. I ran it, you know, just me and my mate as the training thing, and then I've hiked it 3 times now.
Yeah.
I love it. But anyway, I ran that in 4.5 days with like a 10 to 13 kilo pack.
Yeah.
With 2 food drops on that one, and finished really strongly. It was a great lead into the Pyrenees run.
Yeah.
But yeah, generally my back just does better and better, like the more I do. So I've got a 1,000K hike coming up in about 8 weeks in WA.
Of course you do.
Yeah. Because I'd sort of had 3 years off because my business, my little vegan B&B, got super busy, and I moved up here in COVID, so I'd had like 3 years of no long hikes. So this year I've got back into that. I did I just pulled a little half marathon thing out of my bum last year. I did a 2-day like 50K mountain bike, followed by the next day you do a half marathon. I just wanted to do it. I hadn't really run much, but it was fine. And that's good. But other than that, I'll just break into a trot every now and then, but I don't really call myself a runner now. I'm getting right into like this longer distance hiking thing. So which is basically what I did in the Pyrenees. So, I mean, it really was very little running in the end.
When we, before we got on, you said, look, I'm not actually running at the moment. So explain that to us. Explain what not running looks like to you.
Not running. So after the Pyrenees, because I did the fundraising thing, like everything, all the money to get over in there, that's all self-funded. So everything, all the money that is donated goes 100% to the charities. And I'd shut my business for 2 months, flown to France, spent all this time in France doing all this wonderful stuff. But I came back and I was really broke. Like scary. Yeah. I had to borrow some money off mum because I didn't think I'd make the mortgage repayment. Wow. But when I was in France, I actually put the word out because I'd finished early, you know, because I sort of was giving myself some time in case I didn't finish the race and I wanted to go back and hike some. But I couldn't afford to change my flights. It was like $400. I didn't have it. Yeah. So I was kindly gifted a lovely stone cottage over in the near the Italian border, back on the other side of the country again, and I just stayed there for free, which was delightful. Awesome. Yeah. But anyway, so I got home and then I really got stuck into work. You know, I just went full force into the bed and breakfast, doing heaps of cooking classes. It just really exploded in popularity I'm not 100% sure why, but it just got super busy. And when I did I'm a bit of an extroverted introvert, so I do need time alone to recharge. And I never really got a lot of time alone. And I used to go to the Larapinta every year just to disconnect and not have to look after anyone and not have to clean and not have to cook. I wouldn't even take a stove. And it was my little recharge time. But then, you know, mum was sort of getting sicker, but I didn't want to race because I didn't want another pressure on me to say I've got a race coming up, so I've really got to run. Gee, I've only had, you know, I've worked a 17-hour day today, but I've really got to go for a run because I've got a race coming up. So I didn't want that. That would just been, so I started to just walk. So I'd get up in the morning early and go for a walk. So I just started walking all the time and the running just fell by the wayside. And, you know, at the same time, because I've got a touchy back, I had a favourite pair of runners. And I had about a dozen of them, you know, Pearl Azumis they were. And then they stopped making trail shoes. They stopped making like running stuff. And I just couldn't find a pair of runners that suited me again. And that was also problematic. So I kept on trying all these different runners, and then I'd run a little bit, you know, when I felt like it, and never felt good. So this went on for ages, and then I moved up here, and then I had time to start to run again. So I started out, I was running again a little bit, but again I was just getting sore ankles and stuff again, and things weren't feeling good. And I thought, you know, maybe it's just my body, like, you know, I'm postmenopausal and maybe it's just how it is, you know, maybe my body just doesn't want to run anymore. It's just my ankles are really stiff, you know. So I just let it go, you know. I just started to just enjoy all the other sports. So I paddle and I mountain bike and, you know, do yoga and weights and stuff like that. So there's lots to do up here, lots and lots of fun multi-sport stuff. So running, you know, if I don't run, I don't run. But I recently just found some Toppo runners. Do you know Toppo?
I have heard of Toppo,
Yeah, so I just got them a week or so ago. And, oh, my God, I actually bought them for the Biblimum track because they've got a Vibram sole. They're wide in the toe box. They've got a nice cradle of the ankle. They've got a bit of cushioning. So they're sort of like everything that I read about them seemed to be on my checklist. But then you never really know until you put them on. Yeah, and if you're carrying a pack, you've got to have something pretty sturdy. So I think they might be my runners. So they're surprisingly light for a Vibram sole, but I haven't had a run in them yet. But at the moment, like, you know, I'm just focusing on this hike. So, but I never say never to running. You know, if I found the right shoes and if I feel like having a trot, I'll have a trot. I was running late the other day and I just did a little like 3K trot and pulled up fine. Like, it was easy. But that was in a different pair of runs. So we'll just see, you know, but I do love the hiking. I really do.
It sounds like a lot of your training has been by yourself as well. Would that be right? Like, not just running, but in general?
For sure. Yeah.
So is that just been the way the world has
because I live out. I've always lived a bit rural. So like when I had the farm, I did have a girlfriend who's like amazing athlete called Deanna Blegg. She's like all sorts of multi-sport, very, very well known in recent years for obstacle course racing. She won the world's toughest mudder over in America in 2013. I actually went over and crewed for her when I was traveling. Met her there. That was sort of something we planned to do. It was her second attempt at it. And I said, well, I can go to America then. So I did that. Yes, I'd run with her sometimes, and a few other friends in the ultra running. The Victorian ultra running scene was awesome. Like, I do miss the scene very, very much. A beautiful bunch of people. Loved them to bits. So supportive.
That's funny. You're the second person to say that. I've heard Victorian Tasmanian. Actually, I don't know if he grew up there. He might have grown up in Queensland, but he lived here in Tassie. And then went to Melbourne, and he's one of the podcasts a little bit earlier than yours, and he was saying, because he's been doing a lot of ultras in the last few years, it's saying how
we know stacks of the same people.
I think so,
I do miss that. It's probably the main thing I miss about ultra running is the ultra running community, because the adventure racing community was great too, but they can tend to be, you have to be a bit geeky and stuff to be into adventure racing.
Lots of gear. I take it. There'd be a lot of gear, not just your runners.
The gear and the you have to be very strategic, and there's the whole map reading thing. So you can get all a bit up in your head. Whereas trail running, ultra running tends to be, quite earthy and I don't know, at least when I was doing it, it was bloody awesome. So I still stay in touch with a lot of people. So it's great. But I was also,
hiking and trail running are quite, they're like their little sisters. They're kind of the same thing. You're just moving a bit faster, perhaps. And you might be carrying a bit more heavy stuff if you're hiking rather versus running.
But I mean, of course, the thing is, because it's not a race, you don't see each other at the same events and stuff like that.
True.
But anyway, so, I do miss that side. I've got a friend up here who I met in 2014 when I came up and did a recce up here, because I was pretty sure I wanted to move this way. So I do actually do quite a bit with her. She's still really excellent ultra runner, but she blew out her hamstring really badly in a bit of a freak sort of running, you know how it is, like you're training for some really gnarly race, everything's on track, and then you go out for a social jog with a friend and trip over a thing, and she actually tore her hamstring right off the thing. So she's had surgery and everything's quite bad. So she's hiking with me at the moment. But anyway, so I do quite a lot alone just because of, where I live and my hours, because I'm a real early person. Like I get up and I like to be out before the sun comes up. And not many people like that.
We do have here, there's, I call it silly o'clock, but there's a couple of groups. There's a 5:30 one and a 6:30 one, I think, on a Sunday. There's a 5:30 on a Friday morning.
Group,
like, oh, no, that's okay. You can do that. I'll go at 9. So, it seems to me like you are a person who has to move all the time.
In what way?
Like you're always moving, doing stuff, yeah? Like you're always exercising. You're always
I can do lazy with the best of them. Don't get me wrong. My mountaineering boyfriend, when we started going out, he goes, I don't know how you're going to do tent life, because when you're mountaineering, because you have to acclimatise or acclimate is the better proper word, I think, when you're up high, you go up, and then you've just got to rest. You can't be buzzing around everywhere. This is how you get altitude sickness. So, so he was worried that I'd be like, a ever ready bunny and that I wouldn't do that well. I can really be lazy and, give me a book. I'm happy as Larry to lay around all day. But I do love, like my morning routine is I do tend to wake up around 4 or 5 and I'm up and I'm out training, and I usually train for, I use the word train loosely, but,
You're out moving.
I'm out moving in nature. For anything up to 3 hours a day, I sort of do various things. And then I love my morning routine, but, I don't know. I don't feel like I am, but I do like to have like cool adventures on the horizon. I do like to make plans and, because I'm obviously, about to turn 59. I have this back injury. I found out last year I have osteoporosis. So I've returned to weight training. like the prodigal daughter, because I used to do bodybuilding in my 20s, and then I just hated the gym so much I never went back really. And I knew from the time I turned 50 when I was menopausal that I literally saw a video the other day, me in, I think, where was I? I was in Spain or something, saying, I really should go back and do weights now I'm menopausal, you know, because I knew it, but I just hated the gym. And I still struggle. Like I went to the gym yesterday and I tried to, and I sort of thought I went early enough, but there was all these people and, you know, all the young girls are there and they've got the makeup and they've got the ruched bloody leotards up their backsides and there's all the bros walking around with their arms like this. I'm so like this little grey-haired lady, you know, and I'm looking at, I just don't belong here. This is not my tribe. This is not my people.
Are there things that you can do at home?
You know, I do my yoga at home, and I've got a little bit of a weight set up, but I actually went online last night and looked at like maybe setting up my home gym better. Or just getting up. Like I went on Saturday, I went at 5:30 on the way to the farmers market, and being a Saturday, no one was there. It was wicked. So I just thought I could just get up super early and go. But I do a thing called the Oniro program with an exercise physiologist, which is twice a week, which is a weight training, strength training program that's actually been devised for building bone density. It's specific. Wow. It came out of a thing called the Liftmore study that was done by Griffith University. Yeah, and so that's been great. So that I enjoy that class, and I actually am really enjoying feeling that strength coming back. And I can feel the difference already because I've done bodybuilding in the past. I think my body, even at this age, is still going, oh, hello. You remembered we still exist. So I feel quite positive. I've made some tweaks to the way I eat. You know, I went from just making my own nut milks to now having calcium fortified, you know, soy and almond milk. I take 1 calcium sup a day. I a little bit more mindful with having a little bit more protein as far as tofu, tempeh, legumes, a bit more of a daily thing. So just working with my dietitian like she said, I ate really well. I just needed to make some tweaks. Just sort of do things like, you know, with certain foods that can be sort of have a few lectins and phytates to make sure that you have things like, you know, more vitamin C rich foods with them at the same time. So it's been quite good. So I ended up doing, during COVID, like 120 page meal planner and nutrition guide with her help for like midlife women. That's, you know, because the thing about plant-based in midlife, it addresses all of those other health issues like heart disease and diabetes that tends to catch up with you. But you've just got to make sure you're getting enough calcium, protein, and some other
and you're doing it in the right combination, as you said, of her.
So I did that, and that's just on my website as a you know, a downloadable thing. So that was quite good because it's become, I have sort of 2 Instagram pages now because it's quite a passion for me, because people looked at me and they look at me and I look fit and strong and they go, oh my God, how can you have osteoporosis? You know, 1 in 3 women get osteoporosis. So
I think my
it
mother
just happens. It can be stuff from, you may never have reached peak bone density, you know, in your younger years, because of course, you know, by the time, if you haven't achieved that by the time you're 30, like you're not going to achieve it. It's sort of like slow. And then once you're postmenopausal, it's just
goes down after that.
And the only reason I've never actually fractured, touch wood, I only found out is because I'm proactive about my health, and I went and got a bone density scan just to get a baseline. I was like, oh shit. So I feel very, very grateful
that you did
that I found out early. You know, early. I mean, I've got osteopenia in my hips, one more than the other, and osteoporosis in my spine. So it's not bad, but it's definitely in the osteoporosis range, just in there. So I'm hoping with all of these things that I've started to move the needle just a little. It is very hard to build bone density as an older person, but I feel like, you know, to me, it's just another great challenge. So I feel very positive about it, and I'm grateful for it again, because it's just made me, you know, And you know, wearing a pack is actually great, like going and doing these long things with a pack on. Yeah, and it got me back in the gym. I needed to go back to the gym, and it got me back in the gym. Finally, I strong enough. Why?
You kind of feel like if it wasn't, you know, the kind of person that you are, who, you know, being quite physical all of your life by the sound of it, those things, and you probably still would have got those things, but they'd be much more debilitating it now. Like you'd be really feeling the influence of them rather than being able to not just manage them, but probably keep them at bay.
Yeah, like I do feel quite confident. Hopefully that's not misplaced. But I mean, I had a couple of falls one off my road bike, one off my mountain bike in the 6 months prior to getting my DEXA scan. And both of those falls I could have easily broken something, but I didn't. So what I have come to learn is that you can have like, you know, your bone density, if you can actually have like quite good bone structure, but not particularly good bone density and
the strength
so vice versa. It's a bit like a spindly-legged chair, you know. So I think, you know, perhaps the fact that I didn't break anything in those falls, and also when I was in the Pyrenees, I probably was starting to, you know, go that way too, and I didn't break anything, touch wood. You know, that perhaps the structure of my bones is actually still quite good, and that's sort of helped me in that time. But you know, just building your muscle as well, it's all going to help with you know, if you do have a fall, because part of the Aniro program you are working on balance and all that is the same time, so that's going to help prevent falls, because you know, bone density isn't such an issue until you have a fall and you break something. It's not often it just snaps because you're standing there. You know, it can happen, but it's not very likely. So you know, I've got a lot more adventures to have in my life.
Totally. You're only halfway through.
Yeah. Well, sort of.
Pretty much. That's what I say in my 50s.
A lot of these things I do on my own. So, you know, I do need to, if I'm going off into the bush on my own, I do have to make sure that I'm as strong and able as I can be, because I do have a lot of life left to live. I've got plenty of sparkle left in my eye.
Totally, I would agree. Now, one question I often ask people, but I will change it a little bit. So what do you think about when you're off doing your training? Doesn't have to be running, whatever training you're doing. What kind of things are you thinking about? Don't need specifics, obviously. Like what range, like, because we often have this monkey mind thing going on.
Well, it depends how long I'm out. So there's one thing I know, like going to the Larapinta, it would take, when I was really busy, it would take me 2 days to lose all the, I need to do this and I need to do that and that happened and this, I shouldn't have done that, bloody hell, I'm a bad person, like, you know, and then
all the ruminating.
Lots of that. And then day 3 I'd be okay, and I'm just like totally in love with the landscape, and I'm just like absorbed as part of that, and everything I'm thinking about is just like, well, not all the time, but for the most part you're just in this great headspace. So I think that nature, part of that, of being in nature, and that's why I mean I don't see, I think after you go to the gym you come out of the gym feeling pretty amazing, but when you're out doing long runs or something in nature, or bike or paddle or whatever, you're right in it, you're looking around, this is amazing. I think otherwise in the gym you just look at the mirror and saying, oh my God, I look amazing. Are they looking at me? I hope so.
Oh my, that's why I don't go to the gym.
I know. It's like, I'm just like, oh my God. And like no one smiles at you. It's so bizarre. I like smile at people and they look at me like in horror, crazy. Like, what are you smiling at? Whereas we're used to the trail, like the trail, everyone's like up for a chat, and hiking, you always have a chat.
Always.
But anyway, I'm sounding like an old woman now, which I am. But
no.
Yeah, so thinking like in the Pyrenees, so those 11 and a half days, I did have an iPod thing with music. I literally took it out twice for 30 minutes or so each time. And I think people say, what on earth are you thinking about for all those days on your own? I have no idea. I mean, sometimes you're just suffering. I mean, you really are seriously suffering, and I frigging hate this, and I'm a dickhead, and what am I doing out here? This is the stupidest thing. I should have held a bake sale.
Why?
I literally said that in one video. Like, why didn't I hold a bake sale? Like, this is just stupid. Spend all this money and effort coming here, and I'm like, blah. Anyway, but on a normal thing, when I'm out and about, especially because I think that's why I love going out in the pre-dawn, because say I'm paddling, like if you ever look at my particularly the Beat Retreat Instagram page, I have the most amazing photos of sunrises there, especially from the lake, paddling, and it's just like a Technicolor movie, like from some movie set. And it's just magic. You just get caught up in the wonder and awe of it all. Like you're not thinking of anything except, oh my God, look at the world and look at me, little me in the middle of this. And I'm the luckiest person that ever walked the face of the earth. So I think a lot, I'm very much a gratitude person, and it's not a conscious thing. I'm particularly, now I'm in a good place up here. So like,
it helps, doesn't it?
Yeah, like, when I was all busy, you wouldn't be so much. But up here, like I literally, I literally wake up with a smile on my face sometimes. I have no idea. I wake up and I'm laughing at myself because I know I could feel the smile on my face, which is a very nice sign, but it's obviously a sign that things are good in your life. But the same thing when I'm out on trails. That's, often what I'm thinking. I'm just looking around and just enjoying, but you also get in tune with your body, so you're sort of like, oh, that feels good, or that doesn't, or whatever. But I do often like listening to like an audiobook and stuff as well sometimes. I love music, but music is something I tend to listen to more at home or in the gym. And if I'm out doing something long, I really like learning, so I listen to an audiobook or a podcast or something.
I do a bit of that sometimes.
Yeah, podcasts are great.
So I know one you can listen to. Can listen to this one. I'll put some links too in the show notes to your stuff, so people can go and have a look and see what you're talking about and get into it. That'd be really cool. Those awesome. The awesome, sunrises and things. I often get that here. I don't have to go anywhere though, just look outside.
Yeah, my old place used to be like that. I see things come through my Facebook memory feed. My office used to just face, the whole front of the house used to face east up on a hill. And I used to come over the ranges, and just, I do miss having that big view because I'm on a flat. I've got a lovely, restful, bushy view here, but I miss having that big 180-degree view. But anyway, you can't have everything.
You can't. Well, I don't know. Maybe you can. Who knows?
Well, I can't have a big view and then have this nice road that's easy to cycle on.
Well, that's true. Yeah. Otherwise, you'd have to cycle up or down. And then
I really like. I mean, I can just jump on my bike and ride into town here. It's about 7 k's away, and it's flat, and it's just like I can grow really old here.
It sounds perfect.
I'm just on the right distance from busyness.
So if I was to ask you, like this podcast is kind of to encourage people to get moving. Obviously for you, it's not, it's kind of about running, and most people I talk to are, that's their main focus, but not everyone. And certainly not you. So it's not just running, any kind of moving, I think you're up
any
for.
kind of moving. Yeah.
So if people are listening to this are thinking, how can I get, I've been quite sedentary or coming back from an injury for a really long time, what kind of tips would you give them to either, I think even for you, when you were coming back from your back injury, it was walking led to running because it was kind of the natural progression. And often people recovering from injury, that's sort of the first step, or even from a beginner. It's kind of that first step is running to starting to move.
That's what I always say to people, like, and I think that just creating habit, like this is a weird sort of thing. Is it analogy? Is that the word? But it's like I was just thinking to myself the other day, it's taken me 58 years to floss regularly. 58 bloody years. So I am now a regular flosser as the last 6 months.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very proud of it. But it's the same thing about running. Like, to me, I think I'd heard something on a podcast, and they literally said that you go in and you floss one tooth. So that's what I did. I went in and I said, that's all I have to do is just floss one tooth. And of course, generally I just floss all of them. And also, so now I do floss. I only floss once a day or every night. But I think it's the same advice I used to give people about running. Like, literally, I've always said this, like, just if they're super, super couch potato, no matter how busy you are, is like literally if you've come home from work, say, just, put your bags on, anything that urgent that you have to do, like toilet or something, but like just turn around and then, put your runners on, like even before you leave the office, and just go for a little 5-minute walk down the road and 5 minutes back. And actually don't let yourself do any more than that, maybe for the first few days. But that's the thing. It's like yoga. I've just come back to a regular yoga practice. I just use an app, and that was the same thing. There's one particular one that I really like, practice, and it's a 30-minute practice. And if for some reason, I've left it, I hadn't got that. Like today, I actually haven't got it done, which is unusual. So I will be tempted to just go it's getting late now, I'll just do this, I'll do that. I thought, well, just go and do 5 minutes so you can just stretch it out, and I'll bet you I'll do the whole thing. But, it's just to make, the agreement with yourself is do 5 minutes and feel good about yourself and actually celebrate that. To actually say, actually say, well, good on you. You did that. So to me, that's just creating habit is huge.
The habit just to start, as opposed to just the habit to complete. That's kind of the starting.
Just to start, just to get the habit of whatever time works for you, whether you're a morning person or a nighttime person or whatever it is, just something. You got to work out what it is. And if you don't like running, who cares? Don't run. Running isn't the be all and end all. Just find something. But I still think that just walking is just you can do it anywhere. You don't need anything. You can even wear unsuitable footwear. So, it's just a really nice place to start and to actually to allow yourself to feel, because, if we only do 5 minutes, it's really easy to go 5 minutes, whatevs. Yeah. But to actually make sure that, that's 5 minutes that we're normally sitting on the couch with a Tim Tam, so to actually make sure that we recognise that that's a step. I'm very proud of myself about my flossing right now and for doing my 30 minutes yoga every day, and I can see the difference, and I make sure that I notice those differences.
Acknowledge.
I don't spit blood into the bowl.
That's
I'm way
good.
too graphic, aren't I?
No, that's good. Really, I'm glad you're not doing that. I'm glad that the flossing has enabled that to happen.
Exactly. There's no more doing that. And same with the yoga. I can literally feel things coming back, just like you do a back bend thing, a camel, I think they call it. And just how I first started, even only when I got back from the Larapinta, the front of my neck was really tight. When you put your chin up and leaning back, it was quite, now there's no pressure there. It's just open now, and just all these different things. And you got to take notice of that stuff. If you start taking notice of it, you actually realise the progress you're making, and it makes you want to keep going.
Yeah. And that's only when you start the habit that you'll get to the stage where you'll start noticing some things.
Yeah. And then that creates its own joy. But if you don't find joy in it, you've got to find joy. Nothing should be, there's going to be days where you don't want to do it, and that's where the discipline of just, stepping out the door, that's when that practice that you've made is important, because you don't feel like doing it. And then down the track, and, if you're hating it and you're out in a run and just just bring it home. Really, life's too short. Really hating it for whatever reason. But, I don't know. I just sort of find I wake up in the morning, because I'm lucky up here and I do different sports, because when I was just running. I don't feel like running today. Well, that's what you do. But now I go, I don't feel like running. Okay, I'll go for a paddle. I'll go to the gym. It's nice doing other things. So and it's better for your body as you're aging too, I think.
Yeah, having a changing up those movements. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's good.
100%.
Well, Jan, is there anything that we haven't covered? I feel like
Probably
we've
not.
covered a bit of stuff. Is there anything
I don't know
that
how long this went for. I told you I could talk.
That's fine. We're not at the record yet, but we don't need to get to the record.
No, we don't.
But we are close. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us before
nothing I could think of off the top of my head.
Excellent.
But look, if anyone has any curiosity about going more plant-based, always happy to For people to send me questions, like, just contact me through social, like Instagram's always a good one. And, if I don't know the answer, I can refer you off to people that do.
Yeah.
And there's one thing that I do know is whereas, like, I don't think the world's going to go vegan anytime soon, but you can't go wrong with increasing the amount of plant foods that you have in your diet, especially the unprocessed ones.
Yes,
of course,
I agree.
The processed ones are problematic. Okay for a little treat every now and then. But real food is very good.
Yeah, I think so too. The unprocessed is really the way to go. Learn from our ancestors first. Stop eating so much sugar and bread and things like that. So that's our message, our health message for the day.
Eat more veggies.
Yeah. So thank you, Dan. It has been a real pleasure to get to know you this way. I know,
Michelle, thank you for asking me along,
giving us your time. Time is precious, and so we really do appreciate it. So.
Yeah, one of my cats has like literally been going from window to window, looking at me and yelling. You probably hear this little meow in the background.
Like, what are you doing? Spend some time with me.
Food driven. Food. It's getting on to dinner time.
Of course, yes. All right, so thank you very much again, and just stay on and we'll have a quick chat, and because I've obviously kept you too long already, but it's been amazing and I've learned so much from you. You are an inspiration. Thank you for sharing your story. We do appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Fit Mind, Fit Body podcast. For a bunch of resources to help you get and stay fit, head over to the website fitmindfitbody.co, and I'll see you there. I'll also be back here once a week. Bye.